for people who cannot make it today. So thank you so much for joining us this evening. My name is Susan Kabani, and I'm the co-founder of Ugenie. And tonight's agenda will be first to go through a bit of Zoom etiquette. We'll do a round of introductions with Rosalie and myself. We'll go into the presentations, and then we'll leave some time for Q&A. So, start thinking about the types of questions that you guys might have, put them into the chat, and we will come back to them at the end. In terms of Zoom etiquette, I've already covered it a little bit, and I think we're all now 3-4 weeks into doing most things on Zoom, but please do stay muted until the Q&A, dropping questions into the chat. And if you want to share any contact information about yourself, each person's webinar style, I would say, is different. That's the first thing I'll start with. Our webinars, I don't even know if I should call them webinars. There's going to be a lot of information in there for you. But a lot of the reason that Ugenie does events is that we want to encourage people to meet each other. So there's always that combination of social and learning. And I'm still actually really trying to find our style yet, because I want to make sure that we create that time to meet, but maybe those are separate events. So we're going to just kind of keep it flowing and learn. One of the tips Rosalie's going to leave you guys with is the way to get good on doing webinars is to do webinars. Who is Ugenie? Just so most of you, I think, may know who Ugenie is, but Ugenie is a private platform for communities and businesses to have essentially their private owned social network. We work with a lot of brands, from coaches to membership associations and charities, and doing webinars is a big part of our strategy. It always has been, but now it's actually obviously become even more important, which is why we've started to do a lot more ourselves, but have also brought Rosalie in to help our network learn how to do webinars. And just to give you a sense of some of the things that we're doing over the next month. So in addition to doing webinars on customer retention, online communities engagement, cash flow in a crisis, we are also doing some fun ones that happen on Friday nights with one of our clients and partners, Miss Jones, and we do pub quizzes. Although we're going to start looking at doing some comedy nights and some bingo as well to kind of change up the pub quiz, because I know a lot of people are doing pub quizzes. So if you want to get any information about these, you can check out our website, ugenie.io/events. If you've already gotten tonight's email, you can be on our list, and/or just reach out to me and I can add you to our ongoing list for all of our events and webinars. And then I'm going to share with you just quickly my own lessons from a webinar that I did a couple of weeks ago, which no one attended. So I would say in terms of, and then I'm going to turn it over to Rosalie to give you all the juicy stuff. But what I learned from that webinar is, even though nobody came to watch that one, and I think the mistakes I made that week is I did 3 webinars that week. I had done one on Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And, the first 2 were quite well attended. And then the Thursday one, only one person had signed up. So I kind of already knew that she may not show up, this one person that I was running this webinar for. But I looked at it as an opportunity just to record it and then have that asset that I could do in replay. So, when I first started doing live real world events for Ugenie before we had built up the network, there were also events that we were doing with very few people, or just the team. And again, as we built up that list, we were also learning from those things. So, I didn't get too disheartened, but I did learn from it. And ultimately, by not having anybody there, I was actually able to just record a really nice asset. So, it has changed, it has grown, our style has changed, but that practice, I think some of you might have heard, we were talking about Facebook Lives when you joined, sometimes just when we're really nervous, and we don't want to do that Facebook Live, it's just about starting to do it. And maybe you just do a webinar, do a practice when you're just doing it for yourself or a couple of trusted people, so you can go back and review and see what that was like. So I just wanted to share with you before Rosalie starts that, webinars is an art and a practice, and obviously there's a lot of tech that's involved with it, but there's a huge marketing strategy and a follow-up strategy that also is part of running an effective webinar. And with that, I'm going to introduce, and I've already spoken about tonight's expert, Rosalie. I'm going to turn it over to you to share your screen and jump into all of the great stuff that I know is coming. Let me unmute you as well so that you can actually start. There you go. The floor is yours.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Susan. Yay, so I'm super excited to be here with you guys. And I would love this session to be quite interactive, because if you share questions and things in the comments that will enable us to help you even more. So as Susan said, I'm Rosalie, aka Roz, and I'm the founder of Flat Out Social, and I've been doing marketing for quite a few years. And I think the thing for me really is the main thing for me is helping people understand that marketing results come from having a strong marketing strategy. And so that's what I help different brands do. And so the aim of this webinar really is to help you, is to give you confidence in your ability to run webinars as a way to build your business. Yeah. So this webinar is for you. If you are tech shy, in other words, if you kind of are not too sure about tech and, you don't feel confident using technology, if you're unsure about how to formulate your content and how to put your webinar together, and if you're new to the world of online business, doing business online, because some of us have been doing this for a lot of years, but obviously with the current situation, a lot of us have had to make some changes and just do things online. So things that we'll cover, we're going to talk about why using webinar, what to use the webinars for, a simple strategy. It's just a 3 simple step strategy to help you put your webinar together. We'll talk about some tools for delivery, a bit of do's and don'ts, and at the end of the webinar, we'll ask, if you can have questions, we'll answer the questions for you. So why should you be hosting a webinar now? Well, I mean, the first thing, the timing is it's obvious, right? We are in a situation where a lot of us, we have to do business online because we can't be face to face. But also, one of the good things about webinars is that it gives people a really good sense, people who don't know you, a really good additional touch point, and when you're selling things or when you're delivering work or when you're in business, people buy from people. And so when you're on a webinar, you give people an opportunity to understand, to see how you work, to understand your message, to give them further information about how you do your work and how you can help them. And then the last reason why you should be doing webinars really is because, webinars have a track record of producing results in different areas, which we'll talk about in a minute. So what can you use webinars for? So there's 4 main things that I would, recommend that you use it for. The first one is to attract new people to your business. So if you have a business and you used to meet people, face to face, or used to attend events and things like that as a way to network, using a webinar, it's a good way to build your list, to attract new people to your orbit. The second way that you can use your webinar is to sell. So if obviously your selling method was to have, a personal, you were meeting people face to face, not only attracting people, but selling on a webinar is a really good way to continue doing business. And, the difference in terms of types of webinars is that when you're doing an attraction webinar, it's more about the value that you bring. But when you are selling and you're using webinars to sell, you bring value into your webinar, but you just make sure that you have enough time at the end of your webinar to make an offer that is enticing to your audience. And the third way to deliver, to use your webinar is to deliver your service, right? So you obviously have a business, say you're a coach and you were seeing people one-to-one, and so now you have to deliver your service. It doesn't have to stop. I have a few examples. My kids, both my kids, my daughter, she took piano lessons every Tuesday afternoon, and now she's taking piano lessons on a webinar. And even my son, who did coaching on Saturdays, he's still doing his, his coach does fun things, but he uses a webinar to deliver the training and to encourage the kids and things like that. So it's adapting your delivery and using a webinar to ensure your business continuity. And then the fourth way that you can use a webinar is if you have customers already and you deliver your service and you want to retain them, and you want to build loyalty, you can use webinars to deliver, fun things like quizzes and things like that, which will increase your retention and your business likability, I would say. Okay, so in the comments, can you please tell me which one of these 4 different ways will you use webinars for? Are you intending to use webinars to attract people, or to sell, or to deliver, or to wow? Please let us know in the comments, and then I'll make sure that I kind of give you additional tips based on what you are using it for. Okay, so I'm going to continue. So there are, when it comes to how you deliver the webinar, there are 3 steps I think are really important for you to consider. So obviously here we're looking at higher level, how you're going to make your webinar happen. The first thing that you need to think about, before you deliver the webinar, what are the really important things that you need to take into consideration? The second thing that you need to think about is during the webinar, what are some important key things that need to be in place? And the third is after the webinar, for it to be successful, what are the things that you need to do so that you can reach your webinar goals? So let's start with before. So I would say before you even start your webinar, think clearly about what you want to do with it. Are you thinking about attracting people? Are you thinking about selling? Is it to continue to deliver your service, or is it to wow your customers and do something fun and amazing for them? Because depending on the type of webinar that you're running, that will determine how you will structure your content and how long it's going to be and what different elements within your content that need to take place within the webinar. And then obviously you're going to set a time and date. Make sure that when you set your time and date, you give yourself enough time so that you can promote your webinar. And I recommend that at least you need a week, to if you already have an audience that is captivated. For example, if you're selling, you're delivering, you're wowing, you have an audience that's already captivated, then obviously a week is enough. But if you're trying to attract new people, then give yourself at least 2 weeks, so that you can have enough time to promote it. Define your content, what it is that you want to talk about. Decide how you will promote your webinar. And obviously, a lot of you here tonight, you signed up either because you got an email or because you found a link on Eventbrite. And so I really would recommend that if you are looking to attract people, if that's one of your goals, then to put your webinar on Eventbrite as well. And then you event your attendance. Make sure that your title for your webinar is attractive. A good way to create a title is to make sure that you use how to, or that you talk about the result that people are going to get within your webinar. And create a webinar link. So if you use Zoom, that's a good thing. I was going to say another thing. If you use things like Facebook, if you have a Facebook group, you can still deliver your content and use that as a platform as well. The structure would be the same. But the good thing about using, the combination of Eventbrite and Zoom is that you can attract more people to your webinar. The day before your webinar, make sure that you send confirmation details. We like to send reminders because to make it super easy for people to find the link and get on the webinar. And then another thing that I would recommend is that you have someone to support you on the webinar. So if you're doing the webinar live, have a friend or a VA or someone who you trust, because it's everyone gets nervous doing it. I mean, I've been doing webinars for a long time, and I still get nervous, so it's good to have someone kind of up in your corner, who's there and who's helping you, and that is there to support you. So make sure that you do that, and that will make it easier for you on the day. So during the webinar, so let me know if you have any questions about the before slide. And then during the webinar, start with obviously a warm welcome, an introduction, like Susan did when we started the webinar. She let people know about the etiquette, she talked about the fact that it's important, to keep yourself on mute, and if you want interaction, put it on the chat. So make sure that you welcome people, but then you tell them what you would like them to do. Introduce yourself, and if don't do it like me. I just went, oh, I'm Rosalie and I do this, but spend some time explaining to people, especially if you're doing it to attract people who don't know you. A lot of people that get into the webinar might not know exactly who you are, what you do. So it's a good thing to spend some time explaining to people who you are, what you do, what your company does, and all that kind of stuff. And the third thing is really important. Make sure that you set expectations from the beginning. You make sure that you tell them what they will get, what they won't get, who it's for. Set the scene so that people from the beginning have the right expectations. If you're planning to sell something at the end of the webinar, let them know in advance. Let them know, at the end of this webinar, we're going to be selling this, or we're going to be talking about that. I'm going to be offering you this. Make sure that you stay until the end. The other thing that is really important is understanding that people switch off after 45 minutes. So if you have to make your slides very, very concise. Don't try to ramp up too many ideas within your webinar. So if you're teaching about a topic, make sure you stay on that topic and you don't talk about different things, because people's attention spans are very short. And so you have 45 minutes to introduce yourself, set expectations, deliver, close, and so just make sure that everything is super concise. Try to do single slides with single ideas. So for example, here I'm talking about during the webinar. So then stay within that, with that one idea, and do a single slide per idea. Ask lots of questions, so give people the opportunity to ask you questions about anything that you say that they might not be so clear for them. And then let people know that you will make a call to action from the start of your presentation, and reward people for staying till the end of your webinar. This is so important because people's attention span can be very short. When you reward them for staying until the end, they're more likely to actually stay. And have a clear call to action. So at the end of your webinar, what do you want them to do next? Would you like them to give you a call? Would you like them to, would you like them to book something? Are you selling them something? So whatever it is that your intention for the webinar was, make sure that it's reflected at the end of your webinar with a very clear call to action. Does that make sense? Please tell me yes or no. Okay. Number 3, then the next thing is, after you've delivered your webinar, one of the things that is super important is, again, the webinar is a way for you to interact with people. It's a way for you to, again, sell, attract, deliver a service. it's important that at the end of your webinar, you send a thank you email and you send a replay. It's obvious if it's appropriate, but you always thank people for coming to the webinar. This is so important. And reach out to anyone who interacted with you in the chat, or if, for example, they asked a question about something that you obviously solved, then after the webinar you can reach out to them with a personal message and say, hey, you had this question, is there anything else I can help you with? This is a really good, because the people who interact with you in the chat, they're really interested in what you have to say. So if you can take the conversation outside of the webinar, and you can offer to help them in a personalized way, it's a very, very good win for you. And this is especially good if you are doing your webinars to attract people or to sell. Super, super important. Obviously, if you're doing the webinar to deliver, then when the person you're delivering your content or your service, obviously you can answer the question there and then. But if you're attracting or selling, this is a good time for you. This is a good way for you to reach out to people. And then if you provided an offer that expires, so one of the things that we always recommend our clients to do is, if they're doing the webinar to sell, to put an expiry date on what they're selling, and not necessarily the product itself, but we tell them to do have a bonus that is specific to that webinar, and to provide that bonus for an extension of 48 hours. And we send reminders to remind people of the fact that they have the opportunity to take part into this offer. The other thing that I recommend that you do is that you look at your analytics. Some of us, we don't like to rewatch what we've done, and we don't like to even look at ourselves on a screen, but it's really good to go back to the webinar and to so that you can analyze, and you can see, right, I did this well, or I forgot to add this, or I forgot, because this will help you for the next time that you do a webinar to fix the kind of bugs, really, that the things that didn't work as well, or the things that weren't great. And then look at your analytics, how many people showed up, how many people stayed until the end of the webinar, how many people interacted with you in the chat. Those are really important metrics that you can use to see how the webinars are working for you. So I think I've covered everything here for the after. As you can see in this presentation, I'm not going into details of how to structure your actual presentation, because obviously that's a completely different, it takes a completely different skill set, I guess. It's quite a in-depth topic that Susan and we talked about offering a masterclass, kind of an offer to help, if anyone in this group would like to, help with the structuring of their presentation, then we can help them with that. But here, what we wanted to do is to give you an overview of what you need to think about before, during, and after your webinar. And I would say, if you follow these things, you definitely will be successful in your delivery. Now, some do's and don'ts. Susan and I were talking about this earlier. So make sure that you have a structure when you do your webinar. Use 3 points, 5 points. Stick to your topic. Sometimes, unless you're delivering a webinar which is as an actual work delivery model, if you're using the webinar to deliver your coaching or to teach a masterclass that you already had planned, that's completely different to using the webinar to attract people and to sell, right, or to keep marketing your business. And so if the temptation that you will have is to put a lot of content, because you think, if I put lots of content, people will stay more. But actually, remember that people have a very short attention span. And so you have to keep it short, make it super concise, give your best kind of few tips, and don't spend too much time talking about too many topics. So keep it super specific, and have a structure. This is so important. The other really do that you or don't, that you must never forget, is to have a clear call to action. There's a reason that you're doing a webinar, and if you're doing a webinar for a specific reason, then you have to make sure that at the end of that webinar, that purpose lines up with your call to action. And this happens so many times, that we get so focused on delivering content, delivering value, and then we end it, and then we forget to have a call. So you want to make sure that there's a clear next step after your webinar, and that it's clear, and that you follow it up after your webinar with an email. Using single slides, again, this is super important. Don't be late for your own webinar, and check that your technology, your Wi-Fi, your camera, all everything that might go wrong, check it before you start. And that's when having someone supporting you on the other side, a friend, or someone who is for you, to be supporting you with your webinar, is so important, because they can let you know if there's anything that isn't, so that you can fix it. Another thing I wanted to say with the do's and don'ts is, sometimes you might be tempted to record a webinar and then advertise it as a live webinar, and then when people come in, it's actually a recording. Please don't do that, because people can actually tell when it's a recording. And so if you have some recorded material that you would like to make it into a webinar and use it as a funnel to attract people, or as a masterclass, then I would suggest that you call it a pre-recorded masterclass or a pre-recorded webinar, and you advertise it on Eventbrite or wherever you do your advertising. But you still you be upfront with the fact that it's pre-recorded, because it's a bit disappointing when you go to a webinar and you're hoping to get some interaction, and then it's just a recording. I just wanted to say that again, one of the main benefits of running a webinar is that you actually can interact with people. And so as a brand owner, or as a business owner, when you do a webinar, people get to see your style, understand what you're about, either like you or not like you, but that gives people a real idea of who you are, and it builds your know, like, and trust, which makes it so much easier for people to buy from you. So it's important that you show up, and that you are honest about the methodology. So the biggest truth bomb, as Susan mentioned before, the only way to get good at delivering webinars, or anything in life anywhere, is to do lots of them again and again and again and again. And sometimes you'll feel like, yeah, you aced it. And sometimes you'll be like, oh, that wasn't great, but it doesn't matter. Keep going. And I really want to encourage you, this whole season will end, eventually. And when it ends, one good thing that will happen is that people will now understand how the online world works. And so delivering webinars is not something that's going to go away. So I really encourage you to do them. If you really, want to do them for work, for your business, if you want to add them as a way to do, attract, sell, deliver, wow, start doing it. And the more you do it, the better you'll get at doing it. Okay, so quickly, some tools. So I would say, if you're doing webinars, you need, number one, to have some sort of email marketing system, because you want to be able to, again, as I said before, follow up with people and give them the replay if that's something that you offer, or just thank them for coming to your webinar. And it's so much easier if you have an email marketing system. So using something like MailChimp or MailerLite, which are free, I recommend. You will need to use a video conferencing provider, which Zoom is a good one. Obviously, with Zoom, if you use a free edition, you only have 40 minutes to deliver your webinar. So I would recommend that you get the the basic plan, which is about 100 and something pounds a year. It's not that much money. And to have your presentation tool, which you can use Google Slides, or I'm using Canva right now, or you could just have a PDF. It doesn't matter. But these are the basic 3 things that you need to have. But if you're more advanced and you've done this before, some of the things that you can do is use a more advanced CRM system. So I use Keep, which includes automation, and it makes you can make webinars evergreen and things like that. With that, if you have a more advanced CRM system, I would use countdown timers and things to kind of help people with the whole idea of this isn't going to be there forever. Anything that adds shows people a timer helps people with understand that there's an urgency for them to register. In terms of video conferencing, I really like Zoom, but another tool that I really love that some of my clients use is called Demio, and it starts with $34 per month. So just have a look at that. And some presentations, you can use, again, Google Slides, Canva Pro. There's so many different things. But I think if webinars is something that you're going to do on a regular basis, it would be really good for you to think about how you can automate them. But if you're just starting up, I really recommend that you think about having a very simple CRM that you can email people very easily, video conferencing, obviously, that you'll need, and a presentation. Now, if you're really scared of using Zoom and things like that, you use Facebook, you can do lives and do the same thing, create a promotional, think about what you're going to do it for, think about all the pre-webinar steps, and then you can deliver it there. But then you make sure that you follow up with people, because that is the key to it all. I hope this made sense, and please do put in the comments if you have any questions. Right, so this is it. I mean, as Susan and I, we talked about doing a webinar masterclass, and we said, because we know that this is a very popular topic, we would love to help you get your webinar live in 48 hours. So you will help you design what it is that your webinar will be, help you with your topic and your title, help you create your webinar. We'll have templates and things that will help you with that, and then we'll review it for you, because I think that's one of the biggest things is this okay, is this not okay, and everything really that you need to do to get your webinar up and running quickly, then we'll help you with that. So if you are interested in that masterclass, just let us know, and then we will send you all the details for that. Yeah, so that's it really.
Rosalie, there's a bunch of questions. Thank you so much. That was I'm even just learning a lot of stuff, and I'm sure, everyone who's gone through the webinar process for me has seen me not do some of the things you're talking about in terms of making it easy and reminders. And so I know I'm still learning, but I'm just going to go through all the questions for you, and then we have one raised hand, but let's go through the questions in the order that they were asked. So Tasneem asked, what are your thoughts, things like Webinar Ninja or Jam? Do you know those 2 platforms?
Yeah. So I like Webinar Ninja. It's a really good tool. Webinar Jam is good if you're thinking about automating your webinars, then definitely Webinar Jam. I prefer, so in terms of live webinars and automated, this is the best advice that I can give you. Before you automate them, you have to make sure that the ones that you are doing live are converting. Because I love automation. That's what I do as, in my business. It's all about automation. But the problem is that if the webinar isn't converting when it's live, when you automate it, you're going to magnify something that isn't working. So what I suggest is that you start doing lots of webinars, you do live webinars, and then when you uh, get conversions, then you take one of the webinars that you recorded that were really good, and then you automate them. So 100%. So I would say, so again, you know, Webinar Ninja is great. I like them. I know the guys that founded it, they're really great people. And Webinar Jam is good for automation. So 100%. I would, you know, yeah. But again, with the automation, make sure that you feel comfortable with them and that they're giving you results.
The only thing is that I think people can't stop and start. If it's on a webinar and say it's recorded and they have it and I have an exercise, then they can't stop and start it. So I'm just wondering if Zoom does that, you know,
If
they missed it and and then they want to hear something again, they can't unless they go right back to the beginning.
Yeah, so that's why you send them the replay.
No, but even with the replay, then say in the middle, they want to stop at the 5 minutes or 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Go and scroll it forward. They can't do that on Ninja.
And okay, right. And what do you do them for? What do you do the webinars? What is your line of work?
It's providing, you know, self-development, coaching and leadership training.
Okay.
And, you know, basic communication or emotional intelligence type stuff.
Okay, right.
I mean, helping people to move from A to B. So it's mainly deliver, but also have a call to action at the end.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Great. Yeah. So, and you would like them to stop and start?
Yeah. So is it then best to use Zoom?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, definitely. Do you already have a contract with these?
I do. I have a contract with Webinar Ninja, but I'm also using Zoom for meetings.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned that if I have to use Zoom for webinars, if it's another cost as well.
Right. Yeah,
well,
but
so one of the team members I was working with was looking at the difference between Zoom Pro and Zoom Webinar, and Webinar charges more, but there's not a huge amount of difference in what the functionality is.
Ah, okay. Okay. Because obviously Webinar Ninja, I've committed to it now, but it doesn't do the stop and start. That's the frustrating thing.
right. But and how long are your webinars?
Well, I did a series, 6 tips to achieve clarity. And I did a series and there were 10 minutes for the first one. Second one was 30 minutes. Third one was 10 minutes. 10 minutes.
So you can use the free edition of Zoom then.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
the free edition of Zoom, that would have webinars. I mean, I would, okay. All right. I didn't know.
If you are sending people the video, right, of your, is that what you're saying? Because are you doing 10-minute webinars?
Well, that series I did automated, but people have asked me for it. So I've sent it to them, but they're frustrated that they can't stop and start. So I'm thinking of transferring that series because it's really valuable for COVID period.
Yeah.
So I'm debating whether to put them all on live on Zoom, not have them automated, and have them live on Zoom, but with similar content.
Right. Okay. Because I wouldn't, if you're sending people exercises to do, then I wouldn't consider that as a live webinar unless you're teaching the class yourself, you know, on the webinar.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean? So I wouldn't. I mean, you don't need to use a webinar provider to do that. You could just, because what they need really is the content, right?
Yeah, no, they need the content and the exercises because it transforms them in their mind. It's the way I do it.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
Rosalie, is it okay if we move on to some of the other questions? Yeah. So we've got a couple of repeat questions. Two people asked how do you reward, like what types of rewards for staying in the end, to reward them for staying until the end, in what way? And then the other similar question was, what are the best ways to reward people till the end? So, yeah,
great. Okay, so reward to the end. So for example, say you're delivering a webinar to sell something. Okay, so we're going to take the example of Ugenie. So Ugenie has an offer, which is what they do, which is they sell a hub to communities, right? And so say Ugenie delivers a webinar explaining how it works and how to create an engaging community. And then at the end, you reward people with giving them special bonuses, specific discount for people who were just on that webinar, or an additional product. So, for example, if you get a hub, if you sign up to a hub today, then you get a free consultancy because you will need help with your content, or you'll need help with your strategy. So just adding things to your offering that are specific to what the people came to the webinar for, but that are only for people who attended the webinar, and then you give them a 48 hour or 48 hours or like 2 days to take up the offer. I hope that makes sense.
I'm going to ask a follow-up question on that. And do you tell people at the beginning that there's a bonus for them?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So remember at the beginning, we talked about setting expectations, and we say at the beginning of the webinar, you say, and this works really well. We say, stay till the end because I'm going to offer you something that is specific to the people who have attended this webinar. And then you say, you let them know in advance that they're going to get a special bonus just for attending this webinar. You just tell them from the beginning. So then you've set that expectation that at the end, number one, you're going to be sold something, and number two, if you stay, that you're going to get a bonus.
Okay.
That people who don't attend the webinar won't receive.
We've also had 2 questions on evergreen automation and evergreen.
Oh yeah, sorry. So evergreen means so you run the same topic, the same webinar over and over again, and you use that as a strategy to attract people to your email list or to your orbit. So for example, say you are with this webinar, we could literally use a webinar, and every single week on Eventbrite we have the same webinar running that attracts people who just want to learn about webinars. So we call that evergreen. So every week it's the same topic over and over and over again, and then that helps attract people to your email list.
Is that like the one that we're doing now at 11 o'clock on Tuesdays to just help build communities? So because we're doing the same one over and over.
That's right. Yeah.
Now,
so
should we tweak it a week upon week? So if some people want to come back, or is it really just that first one to get people in for the first time?
No, it's that first one to get people to know. Think about it as a lead magnet. When we talk about lead magnet, which is basically having a download that people download, they only download it once. They consume the content to help them with something. So it's basically using a webinar to get new people to discover who you are, what your brand is, and you run it every single week. And what that does is that it gets new people to discover your products and your services, basically.
So one of the relevant questions that someone also asked was, what methods of advertising do you recommend using?
Yeah, very good. So that obviously will depend on who your audience is. So obviously, if you're a coach or Facebook is always a good way to attract people and to advertise. Eventbrite right now is really they're really good when it comes to advertising your webinar on Eventbrite, because right now nobody's doing events. So all the events on Eventbrite are online events. So I really do recommend that you put your event on Eventbrite, your webinar on Eventbrite. But then also it's not just, so for example, what we do for this webinar is that we send emails. If you have an email list, obviously let people know that you're running a webinar, but also then use Facebook and put the information there to your audience. If you have strategy for using ads, then I would suggest that you do that as well. And another really good way to do it is to create an event on Facebook. So Facebook has a functionality where you can create an event on the actual application, and it's good because it shows the algorithm will show your webinar to other people beyond your list. But again, with Facebook, anything that you do, it's pay to play. So if you want people to see it, I recommend that you, even if it's just boosting it with a few pounds, it's a good thing to do. I was going to say something else and it just slipped my mind. Yeah, but definitely use email. Don't just do one thing. Send an email to your list if you have one. Let people know on social media. Post it on Eventbrite. Add an event on Facebook. Do as many things as you can to let people know. Oh yeah, I remember what I was going to say. Sorry. So the title of your webinar is very important, right? So if you're putting it on Eventbrite and you're putting it on Facebook events, it's really important that the title is concise and that it really conveys the value that you're going to deliver on the webinar. For example, the topic for this webinar is the basics of creating a webinar. So obviously the people that are browsing, they either put webinar or online. Make sure that you use keywords as well when you're building your title, but also when you're building the content on Eventbrite or on Facebook, so that are words that people use when they're looking for what it is that you deliver. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
We have time for a few more questions because I do want to run to time.
Yeah.
Carol asked if she's tried to appoint a co-host when arranging a webinar, but it wouldn't accept them. I'm assuming this is on Zoom, Carol, so just drop in that comment. And do you use breakout rooms and whiteboards?
Yeah. Do you know what? Yes, but this is what I would say. If you're not confident in delivering your webinar, keep it as simple as possible. The thing with Zoom is that you can easily have a co-host, you mute everyone else, and you just give the floor to your host. So I would really master your content, master you feeling comfortable delivering the webinar before you start doing breakouts and whiteboards and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And then what kind of webinars are best for training employees?
Training employees. Okay. That would be delivery. So it depends. So if you're saying training, if you're saying doing a webinar to sell to the employee's manager, so that they can come into the webinar and be trained, then obviously it's a sales webinar, obviously. So you need to make sure that you deliver value, but then you let people the benefits of signing up to training the employees. But then definitely delivery. So when you're doing training for employees, it's as if you were doing a normal training in person. I hope that answers the question. So you basically just do a delivery type of webinar.
Yeah, she's saying it's no sales, training staff from home. I'm not sure if that changes the answer.
Yeah, so you're training staff from home, it's delivery. So you just get them into the webinar, you set the expectations from the beginning, you tell them why you called them. Obviously, if it's your employees right now, it's so important to make sure that they're doing okay, and you just deliver your training. You just do that there. Yeah. Make sure that you break it into 45 minutes, because obviously people's attention spans, it's better to not do like a 4-hour training for your employees, break it down into 45 minutes. But yeah, definitely.
Well, great. Well, say on that note, we're almost at the end now. So I think we're going to just, if there's any other questions, Rosalie, are you happy for people to reach out to you?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
So we can drop in the comments or email me. I've emailed everyone today with the link. You can email me and I can connect you with Rosalie. Don't forget, we are running the webinar masterclass for anybody that really just wants to get stuff off the ground. But thank you so much for joining us, Rosalie. Thank you so much for helping us tonight. I think there's always something we can all learn. I definitely have taken the tactic of let's just use Zoom and let's just get going, right? Because you can just, it's the easiest way to get us going right now. I mean, I do have Rosalie in the background helping me with my automation, so I'm not going to say I'm doing this all by myself. I'm definitely not. But for those of you that don't have, someone like Rosalie working with you, I think even using Gmail, Canva, and Zoom, it's a very low cost way of getting and Eventbrite, of course, getting that up. I sat for an hour the other day and I got 7 or 8 webinars up for May within that hour. So I went to Canva, created a template, changed the topic, changed the date, kind of just created that, went to Eventbrite, uploaded them all, including my Zoom account. And with that, with not paying for any of those tools. So was able to do all of that tech quite simply. But if you guys have any questions, hopefully tonight was helpful. We will, the next one next week is going to be on customer retention. And we have a cash flow one coming as well. So please do join us. Yes, Tasneem, there is a cost to the masterclass. The masterclass is 4 hours of our time that we're going to help you from end to end. So we will share that with you guys tomorrow in the replay as well. And of course, there will be a bonus for attending today. Thank you so much. Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.